I've noticed that Catholics don't know how to use their Bibles, a lot of them, and they don't, if you ask them stuff, they never know how to reference it or anything like that. So I think I wish we could change that somehow and put the Bibles in the Mass.
Okay, I have a couple things to say about that, and I really appreciate the comments. And I understand the sentiment that elicits it, and I affirm your sentiment, and I think these are worthy questions. The first thing I would ask, if I had your daughter with me and I were talking to her about it, is where do you get the idea that the purpose in going to the church's liturgy on Sunday is to learn something? Where does Christ instruct us? Where do the apostles instruct us that the purpose of the Christian liturgy is didactic, pedagogical, that we're there to be taught? Where's that idea? Where do you get that idea from?
I don't see it.
All right. And in fact, Jesus gave some really specific instructions about the nature of Christian worship and pedagogy, biblical exegesis, expository preaching. He doesn't really mention them. Rather, he gives us a sacrificial rite in the institution narratives from the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, when Jesus speaks about the Mass. He says, this is my body, which is broken for you. This is the chalice of the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. Offer this memorial sacrifice in memory of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he says to do.
Yeah.
Okay? St. Paul says, as often as we eat this bread and drink this cup, we proclaim the Lord's death. Namely, that the proclamation of the gospel, intrinsic to the Mass, is in the rites of the Mass itself. All right? And that's the first point of contact. I mean, this is the first point that you have to get in your head. Many Protestants are so used to coming to Sunday worship with the attitude that I am there as a passive recipient to be informed. All right? And there's nothing wrong with education. I work in Catholic education when I'm not on this radio show. Nothing wrong with good religious education. But in point of fact, that's not the principal reason that we go to Mass. The principal reason that we go to Mass is to offer ourselves, our bodies, and our lives as living sacrifices to God in a sublime act of rational worship. St. Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 12. When he says, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. This is your rational act of worship. And then in chapter 13, he says, my priestly ministry, he uses priestly language about himself, is precisely to form the Gentile converts into an acceptable sacrifice to be given to God. The Second Vatican Council, in a beautiful text about the liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium is the name of it, said this: the Church earnestly desires that Christ's faithful, when present at this mystery of faith, should not be there as strangers or silent spectators. On the contrary, through a good understanding of the rites and the prayers, I'm not talking first about the scriptures, the rites and prayers, they should take part in the sacred action. What is that action? The offering of Christ's body and blood, soul, and divinity on the altar. Conscious of what they're doing with devotion and full collaboration. That full collaboration means in the interiority of my heart. They should be instructed by God's word, which we are, of course. We read the scriptures avidly in the Mass, and be nourished at the table of the Lord's body. They should give thanks to God by offering the Immaculate Victim. Who's the Immaculate Victim? Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. By offering the Immaculate Victim, not only through the hands of the priest, but also with him, they should learn also to offer themselves through Christ the Mediator. They should be drawn day by day into ever more perfect union with God and with each other, so that finally God may be all in all. Now, if you bring that understanding of the Mass with you, you cannot fail to be edified. All right? Imagine if I went to my wife and I said, darling, I want to spend time with you. Entertain me. Teach me. Instruct me. Oh, you're not gonna do that. Well, I'm gonna go elsewhere. Yeah. What kind of time is that? Not at all. Okay. Yeah. But imagine if I said to my wife, I want to spend time with you, to gaze on you. As the psalmist says, one thing do I ask of the Lord, this I seek, that I might gaze on the beauty of the Lord in his house all the days of my life. Sweetie, I'd love to spend time with you and gaze on your beauty and contemplate your great love for me and mine for you with groans too deep for words. That's what St. Paul says, right, about the nature. That's the dynamic that we bring to Mass. And you see it all around you. If your eyes are open, yeah, are there people there that are dressed immoderately or immodestly and somebody's smacking gum and somebody else is irreverent? Yeah, that happens, right? But then there's that little old Italian lady in the front left pew who hasn't left her knees, for the last 15 minutes, and she's lost in prayer. Your mind wasn't drawn to her. But if you look for her, I promise you she's there. And then there's that fellow behind you. And then there's the young couple with their child that rapt attention to the Blessed Sacrament. That's the attitude that you bring to Holy Mass. Now, do you have to be taught that? Yes, you do. So religious education and instruction is necessary, all right? Absolutely. That's what adult ed is for. That's what Catholic media is for. That's what the catechism is for. That's what your PSR class is for, all right? It's not necessarily what the Mass itself is for.
There you go. Thank you so much for your call, Michelle. We hope that is helpful for you and for your daughter as well.